Dutch. Okay, we have a Dutch request. All right, here's what I'm going to do. Oh, this guy's from Canada. So let's play Dutch. So I'm going to play e6 to play f5 next turn. Okay. This way, he had the option for a French, but I actually took away kind of the better options for the Dutch, I feel like. And I'll explain what I mean after the game. So my opponent is actually doing smart stuff here. Let's counter this. Because, okay, I could stonewall, but this is actually a good setup for a stonewall. Like, the Dutch gives good options for a stonewall, but, like, their f-pawn is still there to take control. So let's play b6 here. I think if this check, you just trade. Yeah, bishop here. Yeah, the g3 setup is smart, certainly. Let's put our bishop on just e7. I don't know where else he would go. g3 setup against this is smart. We're still going to fight for the square, just kind of the centerpiece. Yeah, so it's smart of them to delay this because I would have wanted bishop b4. In fact, I'm still considering doing it. Anyway, let's just castle. See what they want to do here. This is probably how I'm going to set up. I don't want to block this bishop. Okay, 3. They're looking at b4. Not too worried about that. I could play knight e4. Would I want if takes e4? I don't think so. Just keep it simple with d6 here. Okay, they can play this move if they want. Thing is, a5 actually blocked this bishop, so they're actually okay just playing bishop b2, protecting their rook from a trade here. All right, no matter. I'm okay just going knight d7, just normal stuff. Actually, wait. Oh, I think I blundered this move, knight g5. Because it hits here, I would have to take, knight takes e6, hits my queen, and I can't counterattack the knight, so they would recapture and win. So we got away with one. All right, let's proceed with knight e4. It's a safe move. Because still, like, yes, this bishop's unprotected, but I can play knight takes c3, which has a tempo on the queen, so they can't grab b7. And I'd safely just trade these light square bishops. So knight's coming to d7. I got away with one, as I said. And now it is coming to f6. And we're looking at that square, as I mentioned. Here, c1 played. Do I take and replace? Perhaps. I mean, another idea is f4. It's a pretty serious idea. Knight g4 is actually quite interesting, because I think it forces rook f1. I think you can't take it because f takes and then would open everybody onto f2. So knight g4 would force rook f1. Do I have a follow-up to this move? Not that I see. I'm going to play kind of, because I'm not really sure what to do, queen e8, which I feel like is a categorically useful move. I think like these ideas could be interesting. Using the fact I moved this f-pawn is one of William Gray's favorite ideas. Okay, so they jump away from the trays. c7 is hanging. It's kind of annoying to just step back. Rook c8, I guess they take. And it's actually kind of annoying because then knight b5 and it would hit me again. Queen h5 is kind of what I want to do. I just feel like I lose too much stuff, yeah? I mean, maybe. All right, let's do something simple. The thing is just bishop d8, there is c5. And somehow I feel like, no, there's not c5. My queen is actually well positioned to stop c5. So this is actually just a very simple move. Bishop was doing nothing, and we parry away what was kind of bothersome. Knight d2. So if I take it, this is what I was kind of talking about before, that this hangs. Let's just proceed with like our queen h5 stuff, or even queen g6. In fact, I have some really interesting ideas, like take, king takes, check, king g1. Oh, no way, I'm too smart. No way. This works. Out of nowhere. I hit the queen, so there's no taking b7, right? You have to recapture here. Then I go knight check, king g1. Then I take on g2. Right, I take on g2, king takes g2. There's knight e3, fork. So you can't. Where do you go with the king? You go here, that's worse. That's the only other spot. I mean, they realize it now, but there was no way out of this. In fact, probably better to not take the knight. But then, okay, it's still bad. Okay, wait. Let's focus up here. So knight e3, I could play queen b3. I would have to take with a knight. This is also compelling. It's quite compelling. I guess they would play No. I think we're getting a little too testy here. Knight f1 would cover both these things. So let's take this. Very smart, very smart. They don't even have h3 to hit the knight. Yeah, they really needed this queenside breakthrough here with c5, but my queen has been eyeing this knight the whole time. This is smart. Wow, we got away with that. All right. Just as I said, my queen is doing... Bishop g5 is also... Well, I don't need to give them anything. Let's go here. I mean, no way you could take this. Takes... Yeah, it's mate, no matter what. So, yeah, my pieces are working in beautiful harmony here, because my bishop is actually stopping the knight from coming over to guard h2 in either spot. Obviously, you don't have h3. h4 is your only other spot. Of course, I'm taking that without even thinking. I mean, okay, maybe I should think. Because the queen actually couldn't defend across. So, yeah, it was their only move. f4 might be more effective. f4 might be more effective. Yes. I mean, the most logical thing to do is just pull back and just win without sacrificing. But we've never really been logical. So let's go for this. All right. King takes. Do I want to throw in this check? Probably not. Right. So this is actually a good defensive resource. It's actually the one piece that's doing anything. Even though they've played pretty principally and tried to develop and arrange some ideas, we're now getting this rook involved. So takes here. Where are they going? Here. That's actually the best way to do it. Then f takes g3. No, I'm having doubts. This is the best way to do it. You take my knight. I take here. Am I guaranteed to mate on h2? Maybe. All right. Best way to do it, we've revised this, is... We've got so many competing ideas. Let's go f takes here. Well, then knight f3, right? Knight f3, f3. Okay, we're doing this. We're going to go knight e3 check, and bishop takes h4. So we need to keep the queen out. Oh, was that really necessary? Okay, now they're just trying to flag me, which I think is kind of rude. Okay. I'm kidding, it's not rude. It's part of the game. Let's go. All right, wait, we're going to have a look at this after. I think it was mate. I think I had them. I think they had to do what they did. All right, I want rook g6 and just here. Rook g6, knight g5, just h6, right? So what else do you do? Something like that. Now I'm threatening to take. Other rook comes to f1, g6. Now you're running out of squares. Okay, come on, fast. Let's go. c2 is next. That's just instinct. I don't know. That's what I figured they wanted, right? I don't need to take that knight on e6. I gain nothing by doing it. I want e2, but they've worked g2, right? So I'll just take d5. Queen c2 is probably more effective. No, I'll take d5. Oh. Surprise him. Wait, I can do this with all checks. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Can check. Rook takes if king g1. Queen takes if king h2. We got him. Nice game. Because that was a good opponent. And we actually, I think that was an excellent example of just how to orchestrate an attack out of just like a really normal middle game position. Right? I think this is like actually maybe a pretty instructive game. Maybe I played terribly. Okay, I made 2 blunders, and you can see here when we were trading blunders, that was because of the knight g5 resource that we both kept missing, and I'll talk about that. But otherwise, if you exclude those 2 blunders, we played a great game. But we both went back and forth missing knight g5 until I saw it. All right, wait, let's talk about this. Thanks so much for requesting the French. No, the Dutch. Different countries, slightly. So, d4, e6. First of all, why did I start off with e6 when requested to play the Dutch? Because I'm not usually a Dutch player. But I know against f5, there's 2 good resources white has. One is just like the Staunton gambit, which is e4, takes, knight c3, and there can be some dangerous things. I mean, you move your f-pawn first move of the game. There can be dangerous things along here, like bishop g5 is a good move, or f3 even. You know, you've opened this up. Obviously, there can be situations where, like, for example, I don't know, I'm making something up here, but you could get checkmated with, like, I didn't make this up right, but like queen g6 and sacrificing here, bishop takes g6, checkmate, right? Where you open this. Okay, so those things aside, it's better to dodge those resources by just playing e6 on the very first move. f5 also, I think the very best way, other than this interesting gambit, the very best move is knight c3. And here, like, would be very frustrating to deal with something like e4, which gives white excellent space and excellent opportunities to take advantage of holes black may have created on the king side. So like knight c3 and then bishop g5. And now you're really pressing black and making it a little uncomfortable because e6 now opens up this pin, for example. And black should probably have this patched up a little bit better than they do right now. So like those resources can be dangerous for white to just play for a quick e4, which is probably my recommendation for how to play against the Dutch in general. So that for that reason, I recommend e6, where you're kind of keeping your opponent guessing. White could play e4 here, and you will have to play French. However, most d4 players probably don't want to just play mainline Frenches. And you can learn a little bit there, and they'd probably know 0. So you are risking that, but otherwise white needs to do something and kind of give away their hand a little bit, like c4, which isn't like the most useful move. Now against f5, like you saw, I was fighting for control of the e4 square. This is our game. Like now after e6, I've played f5. e6 is a move we're going to have to play anyway, and now we're able to fight for the square. And for example, what I was talking about with like stone walls, so like let's say they just kind of go here, they just kind of go here, they're just going to go here, right? We're able to transpose at any moment to play like d5 and c6. Now we have a stonewall structure, which we can throw at them, which is also like a fun one to play. It's very simple. Like we want to grab that square. We're playing bishop d6. We're going to try to like expand on the king side and such and get them on h2. Like here, I'll make a few moves. So for example, I bring my bishop out. This is white being like a little oblivious and not really doing too much. But okay, like g5, g4 can be a fun idea. Probably better to stop them from hopping into the weak spot of the stonewall. But now after something like queen to h4, okay, this is already extremely strong. We've cleared the way for this to happen with, you know, strong knight, strong bishop, strong queen, and threats on h2, potential sacrifices on g3 as well. This is like a little rushed, and obviously your bishop is going to be bad. Light square bishop is going to be bad in the stonewall because you've blocked this out. But it's still like a resource that you can throw at them at any moment. And again, we're kind of making useful moves regardless here and seeing how white responds. White responds with g3, and so I opt not to do a stonewall. Because if I do kind of the same idea, and put my bishop on d6, suddenly none of the pieces are as effective as they were. This bishop is not hitting h2, and so it's like really not streaking down in an annoying way the way it was. And also, they're more able to kind of use this f-pawn at some moment. So also, one more resource they have is bishop f4, which is trading off for my good bishop. Gives them excellent control over the e5 square. Big hole in my position. Now I am down the dark square bishop, which is going to be very good with the light square pawns, and stuck with this guy. They're able to now play knight e5, f3 if necessary to kick my knight out of here, and then even like e4 at some moment. So this is kind of a good anti-stonewall setup, but I never come into my d-pawn. So I swap after g3 to just use this diagonal instead for my bishop, and I challenge them in time. In time meaning like if I had played something like this instead, then they are hitting my rook, right? Every time you start a fianchetto, you create a moment of weakness. You better make sure you fill that up because this is really annoying. You have to play like, or I probably have to play into a stonewall now or something, right? But now I've played this b6 move, which isn't consistent with a strong pawn chain. So in the game, bishop b7 played. So we're challenging each other's bishops. And this is what I mean by like trying to start an attack kind of from nothing, right? I mean, we're just in a very normal position. Like, what do we do? I get this question all the time. It's like, okay, I get out of the opening, I get to a middle game position, and I'm not really sure like what to do next. very simple things that I did here was I was just kind of looking at my worst piece. So my worst piece was this knight. Where do I want to put it? Well, not c6 in the way of this bishop. I wanted to put it on d7, which made a lot of sense because I knew my opponent's idea with a3, which is kind of a dead giveaway, was b4, and he'd be trying to play c5, which is a logical idea, right? My opponent needs some idea as well. What you're looking for in general, once you bring like your bishops and knights out, is a pawn break, right? Some sort of way to trade off pawns, and thus, when you trade pawns, you open files for your rooks. So you're going to want to do that where, like, my opponent's not going to like want to trade like this pawn for this pawn or something, right? By playing g4, that would make their king very weak and help my rook. But you're going to want to do it in situations where your pieces are supporting that, and it can create weaknesses for your opponent. For me, that pawn break probably looks something like playing f4 at some moment, right? Right now, I really like this e4 square, and I want to put my knight there, and want to put my other knight to like really control that spot. But f4 at some moment can really weaken my opponent's kingside, and you saw I got that in the game. So I played d6 here, which is kind of oblivious because more important than any strategic considerations are immediate tactical considerations. And what you should always be aware of, which I was not at the time, is anything unprotected. So like literally anything that's not protected by something else. So like right now that's this bishop. Literally it is not, like this pawn, for example, is protected. This knight, for example, is protected. For my opponent, you can identify immediately like c4, right? And maybe there's like queen d4 check at some moment that would get that, right? But tactics come from unprotected pieces. And right now, after d6, immediately I have now two unprotected things, and white can win as a result with this move, knight to g5. Knight to g5 is really brutal because, yeah, this bishop is unprotected, so I can't just like guard here. Queen c8, they can distract me. And then they would just take on e6. And the issue is I take g2, take e6, has a tempo on my queen, forking here, and I'm losing material once they recapture there. So I was oblivious to that. Thankfully, they were as well. But, you know, just being aware of these resources, I don't know, will get you wins over FMs because knight g5 was a winning move here that I totally missed. So b4 and a3 wasn't a useful, moving on. b4 wasn't a, a3 wasn't a useful move because then I played d6, right? So the bishop was eyeing b4 and I was able to get them to burn a tempo. So that's why I also felt good about this move d6, right? I got them to burn a tempo with a3, then I closed my bishop. So they're playing b4 anyway. Now I play knight d7. Again, we're trading blunders back and forth here according to the engine because knight g5 ends the game, right? My bishop is hit, e6 is hit. I cannot deal with both of these things at once. Take g2, take e6. My queen is hit, queen moves, they recapture here. At minimum, if not taking this rook, I've lost a pawn and probably worse. So that didn't happen though. Bishop b2, and now is where I'm like, wait, so my opponent's doing like logical things, a3, b4, bishop b2, right? They're activating stuff into the game. They're looking for c5 breaks. Now I'm like, wait, knight g5 is an issue. Thank God that I was able to get away with d6, knight d7. Probably what I should have done to prepare this is something like queen c8. Queen c8, which can help me play c5 and defend this bishop so I don't have to deal with this pin. Knight g5 then, okay, I already have these things covered, so it wouldn't be an issue. Okay, we're hopping into e4, and here my opponent's ideas start to make a little less sense. Rook e1, not sure what my opponent's rook is doing there. I can't imagine this pawn ever trading, right? Rooks stuck behind pawns suck. The rooks get a raw deal at the start of the game. There's 8 pawns blocking all 8 files. So that's why we need to trade one of them or something to open these things up. This pawn I can't imagine ever pushing forward and trading. I have an iron grip over the e4 square, as I continue to do with simple moves. So my last few moves were just d6, knight e4, knight d to f6. Okay, so knight d to f6 here. We are eyeing e4. My opponent continues to just kind of like move all their pieces. I guess you can't really go wrong with that. Rook c1, can't go wrong with that idea. And they're looking at c5. But I do have c5 pretty well under control, right? And so it allows me to play something like queen e8 here. Very logical move. We are continuing to prove all our pieces. We've played f5, and we're actually using that little door we've opened with f5 to potentially jump this way, right? Like you saw, I was calculating something like knight g4, looking at anything I can attack, right? Because nothing really is unprotected in my opponent's position. So here, the idea is f takes e4. I would actually win this f2 point. It would actually force the rook right back to f1, but I would want something like queen h5 to follow up with knight g4, pressuring h2. And so with the tactics not really working right now, just queen e8 is a simple move that's helping my position. My opponent plays knight b5, which is a pretty bothersome move. Dealing with c7 is annoying. Rook c8 is actually not a great move because knight takes a7 is very annoying. Rook needs to move again somewhere, and then knight b5 just comes right back. And so we have the same position, except I've lost a pawn and still have to deal with c7. I didn't want to go back with my queen, and I realized here that my bishop, which is kind of doing nothing, actually has an excellent use. Well, it's sort of stopping c5, but now it doesn't need to because my queen, where she is in the middle of her transition towards the king side, is stopping c5, right? c5, the knight is hanging. So that works out pretty well for me. And here my opponents blundered with knight to d2 because they blundered an excellent tactic. A tactic that was in place because of my pieces now being in excellent positions, right? I've played some pretty simple moves like d6, just improving my pieces here. Everybody's doing something. Okay, this bishop is now worst piece on the board. My next idea is we're going to be like queen h5, f4, trading that off, bringing both the rooks into the game, and continuing to look towards the king side for attacking ideas, right? Once your position is good and you like have a great grip over like a great central square like that, I'm looking towards your king, right? Like, what do I want to do with my dominant position? I want to use those extra resources to get to your king. So bishop to d8 here. A better idea for my opponent probably would have been something trying to prepare c5 or d5 here. I'm not really sure. Yeah, knight c3 just coming back is kind of maybe what you got to do because c5 is impossible with my queen here. It's not a total failure because my bishop was routed kind of the wrong way, but now c5 can happen and it can open up the bishop. With like d takes c5, it can open up the rook, the queen, cause some annoyance for me where I'm trying to keep everything closed and just focus on the king side. So you need to have some sort of counterplay. You can't just like be piling up defenses here. Knight d2, I get it. Like you're trying to make a lot of trades here. I can't even play that move actually because my bishop is hanging, but it doesn't actually have a threat. Knight takes and I would recapture back. So even if I played something simple like queen h5, trying to support like knight g4, f4, I think this is still pretty nice for me. Although I do understand like this knight is doing a lot of things. It's threatening towards their king and it's also stopping c5 idea. But fortunately for me, I had a great tactic in this position, and it is really because they played this not good move, rook e1. They played this not good move, rook e1, and it weakened f2 and presented tactical ideas. Like, even this is going to be a strong tactical motif at some moment because I would attack h2 and f2 at the same time. Fortunately, I had it right now. And while I missed their tactic, I saw one for myself, which is knight takes f2 right here. Unfortunately, Lee Chess does not do brilliant moves, but I feel like I would have got one with this. We hit the queen, so any bishop takes b7 stuff is off the table. I'm very aware that I have an unprotected bishop on that end. Any queen move right now, there's no checks, there's no openings onto my king, so I'm able to just kind of like make this trade, come out with queen h5, knight g4, f4, right? It's not just a pawn, right? It's pretty important defender of your king, and you can see white is lacking pieces in that general vicinity right now. King takes f2 played. And yeah, it's minus 4.1 here, and you can see that's getting worse. So knight g4 check. There's nowhere for the king to go. This is literally the only other legal move, and it's immediately a fork. They're fortunate this pawn is not on c2, because that actually could have straight up trapped the queen. Yeah, rook e1 was not a great move. So king g1, bishop takes g2, queen b3 played, which I think is pretty reasonable. This was actually a nice defensive resource, and potentially set up c5, where like now this is hanging, the rook could be open, the queen could be pointing at my king, and yeah, they're guarding the e3 square. So my bishop is hanging once more. But oops, I have queen h5 right now, which is a great resource because this knight can't get to f1 or f3 without being captured by my bishop to guard h2, so no pieces can come there. King to h2, I would just checkmate you immediately. So that works out well. There's no h3. My bishop is there instead of your bishop. It's pretty funny. So h4 played, and I have to be careful. I have to be careful because, as I mentioned, I was going to play this move without thinking, but I'm only up one pawn, and you can go down two bishops pretty quickly without necessarily a follow-up. And then rook h1 comes. So, you need to be very careful. This pawn is really actually in the way of my rook. And so it makes much more sense than bishop takes h4 here. I think, yeah, bishop takes h4, I would have... Oh, no, okay. It's actually still winning my piece. Like you have this many pieces here. It'll work out, but you do have to be pretty careful. Like this, for example, didn't work. Even then, down two pieces, it's still a draw. But, okay. Things worked out there. But you do have to be precise, was the point I was going for. So f4 was a nice move, and we've crawled up to minus 6.4. Really, it just makes a lot of sense. Like, it doesn't have to be calculated too much because we're targeting that point, which is just really the only guide between me and checkmate, just grabbing h4. And we're also opening up the rook here. So you've got to figure these things are working out. My opponent does what any smart defender should do, which is if you don't see that you're losing immediately after taking material, take that material. Like if your opponent offers you something and you're in a losing position, take it is my advice, because then you're defending for something. You actually have a win condition. If this stuff fizzles out, then you could just be up a piece. Like if you're able to trade queens or something, you have an opportunity to give back the material. You should be defending for something. So unless you're losing immediately by taking material, take the material. It's always actually better to this is even coming from me. Better to attack without being down material than attack being down material, right? So if you have that option to not sacrifice, it is actually better, but, it's absolutely worth it to sacrifice to attack still, if that all makes sense. So it is actually better to not be down material sometimes, I will even say. Knight to e3 check was, I think, an important resource here. Because if I just play f takes g3, I was thinking here knight to f3 actually kind of is a very annoying move. Suddenly I don't have rook f2, I don't have knight e3, and I don't have queen takes here, and this rook can come to h1, and things can go south a little bit. So this move knight e3 blocking the queen is, I think, quite important, and they play queen takes e3, which is the only move, yeah. So their only other option was to step back king g1, and this is what I was going to play, bishop takes h4. Using the bishop, now we're really using all our pieces here. With the queen being blocked, there is no good resource for them. I'm hopping right in there. Otherwise, okay, knight f3 now is not nearly as intimidating. The rook can't come to h1, and my queen, while she can't get into h2, can probably get into g2. So then on e3 sits excellently. Okay, and then otherwise pawn takes f4. It's, yeah, just checkmate. So, yeah, knight e3, good resource here. So we do have to be precise, and my opponent just sacrifices their queen, which makes sense, especially given the time situation. I spent actually a lot of time here, down 2.5 minutes to 23 seconds, but we were able to work things out. So we kick the knight out. That was bothering me. Okay, we're just moving around here and make this trade. I was looking at rook g6, just trying to checkmate. We bring in all our pieces. Again, rook g6, trying to checkmate. So queen e4. Now we're just like, okay, you bundled up around here. You guarded everything with rook takes f3, rook takes g3. Good for you, but I actually have a queen. She's going to come into c2. She's going to attack unprotected things. Unprotected things is actually like, especially blitzing out, it's a good thing to look at, right? I was like, oh, look at all that. Let me come into c2. What a juicy spot given all the things she can take. Okay, d5, just immediately shut that down with e5, grab that, just king away, and then, okay, we were able to take these things and checkmate. So this is, I think, I get this question a lot, like, what do I do when I get into, like, a normal middle game position? Like, you know, there's no tactics, the kings are same side castles, everything's safe. My advice is to just keep improving your pieces, right? We played d6, we brought our knights in, ignore those blunders. We missed knight g5, but we brought the knight around, we brought the queen around, and when the time came, we neutralized our opponent's counterplay with c5. When the time came, we found this tactic, but even then, I think I was building towards a nice aggressive position, and, you know, I had all these pieces in the vicinity, boom, 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 right, to get their king. So, yeah, potentially easier said than done, but I hope to see you guys do it. Subscribe if that goes on YouTube. I think this is actually a really nice game, other than knight g5 stuff.
William Wgraif, the gambit man, takes his seat at the board. e4, e5, knight f3, bishop c5. The Bushgas gambit on the board. On with the gambit classes. Hero pod unlocked.